Alright class, sit down. Today I'm teaching you a very important lesson, so I want everybody to have their notebooks out and their ears peeled. I want that pen to paper, unlike Drake, okay? You guys don't want to end up like Drake. Usually this is where I stick my introduction, but I don't want to do that here. We're getting straight into the video. I will say, if you guys do enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. But anyway, that's the end of it. Let's get into the video. Now I'm going to assume that everybody watching this video is a dummy. Not in a rude way, I'm just going to explain it to you guys in a dummy way so you guys get in the easiest way possible. Now I'm going to assume that you're here for one or two reasons. Either you don't know how to scale One Piece completely and you just want to get a take on it so you can obviously get into it, or you're here just to get another person's take on it since you believe you do know how to scale it. If you have any other reasons, that's fine. Just make sure your notepad is out and listen. To start, there are 4 ways of scaling One Piece, and to actually scale it properly, you need to include all 4. But in this video, I'm going to be separating all 4 of them, and then in the end, I'm going to be using them as a combined unit to then start to scale certain characters. Let's say I'm going to be scaling characters, I'm going to be scaling like 1 or 2 characters. I'm going to be taking feats from many different characters, but in the end, I'll then use my analogies on the other ones on 1 or 2 characters in the end, and then you'll get a better understanding of what I was trying to portray. So to begin, the first one and the easiest one out of the 4 is feats. Feats are the most blatant and in your face since they happen on panel and you literally cannot deny them unless you want to twist it and put your own agenda on it. But in this video, no agendas will be applied, and I'll be explaining every feat with zero agenda and just being 100% real. The first feat I'll be going over is Marco speed blitzing King and Queen back to back. As we know, Marco fought King and Queen in Wano and obviously blitzed them both in this exchange. Now this is a feat because Marco has shown the ability to speed blitz 2 commanders in their base forms. I say base forms because King is in his fire mode and Queen is quite literally in his most basic form. While this is technically a feat for Marco, I believe it's more of a feat for Queen, and I'm going to get into it in a second. I already know a certain group of niggas are going to be like, oh, see, look, there he goes, but let me land. King is in his fire mode, his most basic form, right? And he obviously got blitzed by Marco. The funny thing is that later, King is able to keep up with Zoro in his fire mode on multiple occasions, meaning obviously Marco must have similar attack speed to Zoro. It's similar, but I do believe that Zoro just has higher attack speed as he has hit King in his fire mode, and we haven't seen Marco do that yet. But I like to bring Queen into this because Queen is able to also perceive Marco the same way King was able to perceive Marco, meaning their perception in their base forms has to be relative in some way. You know what that means for the boy, but this isn't the video for that. Let's just get back on topic. Another feat would be Law reacting to Thunder Bagua and taking it, and also Zoro taking it while being on death's door. Also another feat for King, as King was about to kill Zoro if not for the armament protecting him, while Zoro wasn't able to put up armament against Kaido's attack. I think just off of the back of those things I just spoke about, I think everybody is starting to understand how feats work. There's another case where feats can be debunked or they can be overwritten. Just like we found out in 1010 when nobody was really doing real damage to Kaido aside from Zoro's Ashura and obviously Luffy then unlocking Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Every attack before that was pretty much useless against Kaido. So for the new folks that don't really understand power scaling, I'm going to explain it to you in a very A, B, C, D, E, F, G type of way. So I'm going to use the Marco one since I do believe it's the easiest. Marco was able to blitz Queen while in his hybrid form while Queen was in his base form. This Marco was able to blitz King, the same person who Zoro fights later. Now this feat gets overridden or overshadowed because Sanji later is able to blitz a hybrid version of Queen who is obviously stronger. But not only does he blitz him, he perception blitzes him to the point where Queen can't even see him. By using our brains, we can now say that Sanji is faster than Marco. Another ABC type of feat we can use is this. At the start of Wano, Gear 4 Luffy punched Kaido a bunch of times and did 0 damage, like no damage at all. But then when he comes back from Udon and he hits Kaido with the red rock, he does something, but it's not real damage. It's just something to wake Kaido up, and that's when Kaido's like, oh shit, this guy is growing. Then to top it off, Luffy then hits Kaido with a barrage in his Gear 4 form, and then we figure out later that he wasn't really doing that much damage, but when he does get his ACOC, that is when he really starts doing damage. So as we can see that base form Luffy, every time he gets a new level of Haki, is then stronger than the previous one. So that is an A, B, C, D type of feat. I think by now everybody should know how to scale feats. Now let's get into statements. Statements is the second easiest thing to digest as it's literally just being told to you, but certain character statements can be wrong. And there are ways of interpreting certain phrases and certain statements, but most of the time I think you should be able to get it if you're not deluded by some sort of agenda or you're just not dumb. 2 easy examples we can use use are Mihawk's title and Whitebeard's title, as well they're meant to be factually correct. You can also take Dragon's title, but Dragon's title we can't really say for power scaling at the moment. But in his prime, Whitebeard was said to be the strongest man in the world. And we could back that up by him boxing with Roger for 3 days, them stalemating. But what we need to take into consideration is that Whitebeard probably didn't use his fruit a single time in that fight. So when he gets older and he still retains the title, and obviously in Marineford it's literally shown he's no longer the strongest man in the world. So you could technically say in his old age, Whitebeard wasn't the world's strongest man, so you could say that statements can be incorrect, but obviously as we know in his prime he definitely was. How I scale Mihawk is off of another metric, not just purely off of statements, as well his competitor does have similar statements, if not greater statements, in my opinion at least. Just to throw a few extra statements out there, we have Kaido's list, we have Garp and Roger obviously saying that, yo, we used to really box back in the day. Also have Rayleigh's statement. Now, I want to put this up on screen and I'm going to quickly go over this. This is for everyone, so I want everybody to sit here and listen. Rayleigh states that if you fight a tough opponent and you're using your haki to a very high level, you're going to progressively get better at it. This is something that we need to take into consideration when we are talking about people in power scaling. I mean, I use this statement a lot for the Zoro versus Luffy argument as well in Wano. I'm not gonna go over it, but we all know that Luffy fought Kaido for far longer than Zoro was even fighting, just in general, so I don't really need to go over that. And it's just a good statement for characters that have been in long-winded fights. So say for instance, Sanji versus Queen. Queen was a tough opponent for Sanji, so Sanji had to up his level. Obviously, he got an exoskeleton and everything, but in that fight, he obviously grew. Same thing with Zoro. We saw it with Zoro. Haki is naturally going to develop the tougher the opponent and the more you're using it. That's a very good statement, and that's something you must always keep when you're trying to scale characters, or when you see a character going into a main fight, you want to see how they're doing. Look at that statement and know if they're fighting for a long time and they're using their Haki a lot, well listen, they're gonna grow. Now next is portrayal. Now portrayal is probably one of my favorite ones, as people don't really know how to use portrayal properly. In that exact same breath, portrayal is probably one of the most important things when scaling. Examples I'm going to use for portrayal is going to be Kaido's list, and then the next one's going to be the Holy Knights versus the Admirals. Now before I go over these two, statements is a very, very key thing in portrayal. Always feats, and that is why I did go over those two things first. See, portrayal can only be conveyed if a statement is made about a character or a feat has happened and they are then put on that pedestal. Often than not, a basis behind a character's portrayal will come from statements, as most heavy hitters haven't made a move yet, so feats cannot really support them. 99% of the time, their statements are usually correct with their feats. In 99% because yeah, we're not going to get into her. Alright, now that we've gone over that, I'm going to get into the examples. Let's start, we have Kaido's list, and if we look at everybody on that list, aside from one person the community likes to debate over for some reason, that list is basically extremely credible. I exclude Oden because a lot of the community are brain dead. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop. A lot of the community has an agenda for a certain character that basically impairs them on scaling Oden properly, or just some of them just don't know how to scale properly. That's why I'm here to explain this panel so everybody can understand. Kaido says there are a rare few amount of people that have been able to fight me. Now immediately people automatically go to, oh, what about Akainu? What about Garp? What about Sengoku? Okay, cool. He just hasn't fought them. The easiest way to just debunk that argument, he just hasn't fought them. Idiotic logic they like to use is, oh well, Kaido fought him 20 years ago. He even used hybrid when we saw him. First of all, the whole fight wasn't even shown. To top that off, Kaido 20 years ago was the exact same age as Shanks is right now, so what is your point? And I'm definitely not going to sit here and act like Kaido 20 years ago was the exact same strength as Kaido now, but in that space of time, who has Kaido fought to get stronger? What is your point? As acting like Kaido went through some time skip Luffy type of jump in power, like it just doesn't add up. Don't need to go over the fact that Kaido was 21 when he got his fruit and fought Oden when he was 39, meaning he had 18 years with his fruit. And if he didn't get hybrid form in those 18 years, I don't know if Kaido should even be a top tier. But enough on that, let's go back to the actual patrol feat itself. But basically, Kaido puts these 5 people up on a pedestal that high and basically says these are the 5 people in the world who in his eyes are the very strongest. He compares Luffy to them, saying, oh, can Luffy reach this level? Only is that a patrol feat for everybody on that list, it's also a patrol feat for Luffy because that's where Luffy is aiming to be, or he already is basically at. Now, the next one is the Holy Knights versus the Admirals. The Admirals are stated to be on a certain level, but when Dragon finds out that the Holy Knights are now on the loose, he now says this is where we have to get serious. Meaning in his eyes, somebody who knows the world government, because since he was actually a Marine before, He believes that the Holy Knights are a bigger threat to him than the Admirals. Just like with a lot of statements and portrayal feats, you can take this one or two ways. Now, in defense for the Admiral fans, you can easily just say that he views the Holy Knights as a bigger threat because they directly work for the world government, unlike the Admirals who have their own little navy and they have to protect the whole world, while since he's now messing with the Celestial Dragons, the Holy Knights are going to start to get on his back. And again, the same reason Garp didn't want to become an Admiral was because the Celestial Dragons would be able to call upon the Admirals at any moment. So, I mean, it's kind of like a 50-50 thing. It's just the way how you view it. But in my eyes, this was squashed when we saw the Holy Knights go after the Pirates in God Valley. For a very, very simple case of portrayal, let's look at Lucci, Kaku, and Jabra back in Annie's lobby. Back in Annie's lobby, we were given their Dokubaki, or as I like to just say, power levels. On screen, I'm going to put up their Dokubaki. Lucci's was at the top, and then you had Kaku and Jabra fighting for basically second place. As we can see, Kaku was just above him. As we can see here, this is a form of portrayal. Lucci, who Luffy fights, is the very strongest and is far above the two below him, while the two below him are very, very similar in power. That is the easiest way to portray this sort of thing. Back in Annie's lobby, this kind of just betrayed the crew and put them at a ranking, so it was kind of like Luffy was at the very top, kind of gapping the people behind him, and then you had Zoro and Sanji, who are right neck and neck next to each other. That is probably the easiest way to scale a form of portrayal. Another easy way of portrayal was Whitebeard and Roger basically being on equal footing. There's a statement that tells us that Whitebeard and Roger were basically equals, and on top of that, there's a statement saying that Whitebeard could become the Pirate King when he wants, meaning that they're basically equals, so it's a form of portrayal. Another form of portrayal is Mihawk. Mihawk is stated to be the world's strongest swordsman, meaning everybody with a sword is weaker than him. Okay, so now that we've gotten portrayal under our belts, let's get into the final one, which is the most important one in my eyes out of all of them, and that is narrative. Narrative is a very, very easy thing to scale with, and it's something that many other shonen do and One Piece does as well, but people don't like to accept it, but that's the case. It's just how it is. Someone who has gotten the narrative increase the most out of everybody in the story has to be Crocodile. Well, we all know that he was a pre-gear Luffy victim, but now he seems to be commander level. See, when the narrative decides a character to be a certain level of strength, that character will be that certain level of strength, which is why characters that are shown later on in the story will definitely be stronger than characters that were shown previously in the story. See, because Oda likes to add things into the story and keep expanding the story, whether it's in terms of power or just story, plot points in general, people that stay in the story will grow with the story and grow with its power scaling, meaning certain characters will get feats that other characters weren't able to get because maybe those things weren't implemented in yet. An instance of narrative power scaling would be Katakuri. Katakuri got massively power crept by basically everybody in Wano. Always something you guys don't want to hear, but that is the case. Yes, he may hold up in the terms of speed feats and a lot of other things, but in terms of durability and AP, that nigga got power crept, and there's no two ways to slice it. He got power crept. For instance, in terms of AP, Katakuri does not scale to king or queen. Queen on one hand is able to take her armored Haki masters, and well, Katakuri didn't even fight Luffy when he was an armored Haki master. He literally only knew basic armament to the highest level. While King, as discussed before, was able to output a feat that's greater than Thunderbug or Kaido in his hybrid form. So I hope now you guys are seeing this, you're like, okay, narrative scaling does matter. The further along we get into the plot, the stronger the characters will be. And I know a lot of people say, oh, this isn't Dragon Ball. Well, I'm sorry, it's a shonen. That is why narratively, Blackbeard at the end of the series and Emu at the end of the series will be stronger than characters like Kaido and the rest of them. So far in Egghead, we've gotten characters that do surpass Kaido in terms of durability, one of them being Wakari. That is only one of the Gorosei members. We still need to get into all these different things like speed, AP, and the rest. For a very, very basic version of narrative scaling, as I said before, I'm going to use Crocodile. As Crocodile went from losing to this to being on a level with all these other commanders. Now that I've gone over the four main ones, let's go over a character who embodies all four. And for this example, I'm going to use Redhead Shanks. I know a lot of you are like, oh, so why did you leave out AP, durability, speed, endurance, and the rest of them? Should have put this in the beginning, but this is more of a general scale of where a character should be in terms of power. What feats have they gotten? What statements have they gotten? What portrayal do they have? And what narrative feats do they have? Or what narrative implications will they get in the future? Okay, so now that I've explained that, let's get into the character. And as I said before, it's Redhead Shanks. Shanks. Aside from Luffy, I do believe that Shanks does have all 4 of these things pinned down to a T, because he is a character that Oda does love. Naturally, Oda does have all 4 of these things down for Shanks, so we know where to scale him. Okay, so let's go over feats. First of all, Shanks was able to one-shot Kid, someone that Big Mom couldn't even put down. Clashed and split the sky with Whitebeard, and he's also fought Kaido and has made Kaido put him on a list where he believes that he's up there with Roger, Whitebeard, Rocks, and Oden. In terms of feats, Shanks is clear. He has his feats, they're concrete, and we know it happened. Statement: Shanks has stated by the Gorosei, if he was mad, he'd be unstoppable. Just like I said before with the Kaido list, he is stated to be one of the 5 people that can actually fight and possibly even defeat Kaido. In terms of patrol, Shanks has been a Yonko for many years. Gorosei was scared of him. He was on Kaido's list. He had enough influence to stop Marineford. Basically Roger's successor, and he is someone that Luffy wants to surpass. As a patrol, he has it down. Narrative implications, well, Shanks has been narratively implicated to be one of the strongest. Narratively, Shanks is one of Luffy's hurdles, and Shanks himself has said, okay, it's time for us to meet now. And just by reading the story, we know that Shanks is implied to be narratively one of the strongest. We know he's meant to die to Blackbeard, but still, it's Blackbeard. That's one of Luffy's end of series opponents. Now next, I'm going to delve into Blackbeard, as he is someone that is very shaky, but we still know that he's one of the strongest. Feats wise, Blackbeard has defeated Law and he has scarred Shanks, but aside from that, I mean, okay, capturing Ace, okay, that's fine. He did take down Marco and the rest of the Whitebeard pirates, but in my eyes, especially with your crew there, a Yonko should definitely be able to take out a Yonko commander and the rest of his teammates. Now onto statements. Blackbeard is stated to be stronger than Rayleigh is now, and he is stated to be a threat by Shanks, so statements wise, he is covered. Patrol wise, Blackbeard is a Yonko, and obviously he's portrayed to be one of Luffy's end of series opponents. And then finally, narratively, he is meant to be one of Luffy's end of series opponents, so there it goes. You see how when you start to break into feats and statements, the patrol and narrative aspect of it does come pretty easily. What if you have someone that doesn't have feats or statements? How do you really scale them? Well, let's look at Dragon. Dragon doesn't have any feats. He doesn't have any statements. But what we do have is his end goal and people that work for him. Sabo. Sabo is one of the stronger commanders we have. We know what family he's in, so it's kind of like if we use our brains, we know that Garp was Roger's equal, and we know that Luffy is going to become one of the strongest ever. Using our brains, we should be able to piece together that Dragon should be on a high tier of power. Why? Because people around him are portrayed to be the strongest, and obviously if you're part of that bloodline, I'm expecting you to be strong. And narratively right now, he is set out to be fighting Emu. We know that Emu is meant to be one of Luffy's end of series fights, meaning he has to be on some sort of level. I know he's not going to defeat Emu, but he has to be on that level to where it's like he has to be up there with the greats. Anyway, that'll be it for me today. This was a very, very long video. We're like 17 minutes in, and we could have gone over many, many more things, but I just wanted to go over the basics on how to scale a character, as I do believe many people do struggle with that. As I said prior, people just want to come in and see how to scale a character. Now, for things like AP, durability, endurance, and all that, that is saved for more when you're trying to do a 1v1 or a 2v1 or a 2v2 type of thing. This is just to go over, and as I said before, give you a general sort of like look at a character's overall performance and how they should be or where they should be. Plus, all of that is under feats and statements anyway, so yeah. This video is getting way too long. I know I'm gonna have trouble exploring this, so I'm gonna stop now. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next video.
I'm a midget who's suicidal.